Right, a very warm welcome back, everybody. We're at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University Missionville campus in Port Elizabeth today, and we want to welcome you. We're talking about social security. SASSA has been running 10 years now, and just to give you an indication of just how much work and contribution it's making, 17 million grants per month, an amount of 10 billion rand is what's being dispersed. It's a huge amount of money, and that can only mean that a lot of people who would have been without it would be in a desperate situation. And we're unpacking that 10 years on, and we'd like to hear from you at home. But we've been talking to my special guests here. We've also got an audience here, and a lot of things that have sort of come out with SASSA in particular, and I'm not sure who's going to answer some of these questions, but I'm going to start firing them as they've come through. The first one, Minister, is how did you get to 753 Rand a month being enough for a family to survive on?
Briefly,
Yeah.
but Zane will explain the whole thing.
Okay.
One, it's the treasury that comes out with the figure of each grant category. Two, that figure comes out of what Stats SA does. And then we use it because it's scientifically done. But we must say that we understand the food prices have gone up. But when you respond to a parliamentary question, because you don't want to come up with things that will not be able to defend, you go to empirical evidence and use that so that you are able to have a springboard, so that you have something that comes out of one of the state agencies that deal with research. But Zane can make the additions.
Zane, contextualize it, because I think at the moment people think that the 753 Rand a month, that's it. We're supposed to try and survive on this. And,
No.
you know, they're saying it's impossible.
I suppose the first thing we must say is that there's no SASSA grant that's 753 Rand. You know, the 753 Rand, and to talk to what was ascribed to the minister never said 753 Rand is enough. I think the question was how are grant amounts and increases determined per annum, and the answer in a written form stated that it's, you know, aside from SASSA and the Treasury sitting together and looking at what's the inflation rate and what's the envelope in terms of what is available for spending in a particular, the expenditure ceiling in a particular year. Other measures that people would be looking at is what is the food poverty line and the upper bound poverty line. So the answer included the upper bound poverty line, which was at that point 753 Rand. But at no point did the answer say, this is what people can live in on. Essentially, most of the grants, with the exception of the child support grant, is double that upper bound poverty line. But as social development, and including the minister, we've never been happy with money metric measures. We've actually felt that these money metric measures of poverty are not useful. And we used it in the answer as an illustrative way of showing where, you know, where the upper bound poverty line is and the food poverty line, and where grant types are. So essentially quite clear is that the child support grant is way below that. So there's an issue about the child support grant that is too low, and we're very concerned about that. We also aware that even though the state old age pension is double the upper bound poverty line that determined by Stats SA, it's still not enough. And you'll find that old people will argue that they need to stretch that budget because of the amount of people that that actually rely on that. And I think the further contextualization is, in the early days of the grant system, and that's why I emphasize it's a constitutional mandate. In the early days of the grant system, the debates was it's causing all sorts of ills in society. It creates dependency. And I think with the empirical evidence that have debunked most of those myths and anecdotes, the new agenda is, okay, we all have to pay that. Even if there's going to be a new governing party, they will have to pay it. So the agenda now is how much must we pay? Who's going to be paying more and who's going to be paying less? And that's a bigger issue in terms of what is affordable for a living, what is affordable living standards. And we can't isolate the grant system from other measures of solidarity like a minimum wage. What is the minimum wage? What is land reform? So the approach taken by social development is that solidaristic policies must be tackled as a whole and in tandem. And that's why in terms of what we are pushing for is a social protection flow that will include assets such as land reform, that if you're going to be dealing with poverty and the systemic poverty that the minister was talking about, you need to build capabilities. Assets is one of those. Land reform is clearly one of those issues. You need to be arguing for a decent minimum wage, not a minimum wage that actually is not going to make a difference to people. In terms of building a social protection flow, we need a decent minimum wage. So I think when people talk about grant types and grant levels, and we all seek to increase them, and the social development has been at the forefront of arguing for increases, we must actually also then be arguing around how willing are we to accept the full package of what a solidaristic policy package would be.
All right. When I hear these figures, it's quite a lot. Yeah, Minister talked about 1.5 million people, recipients in 1994. And we're up to 17 million now, 10 billion rand. Is it sustainable, given our economy is only growing at less than 1%, which means that there's more and more people that are living on the edge and probably need assistance as they become unemployed, and we've got young mothers coming through the system. Is it sustainable to be having a system that's dispersing this amount of money? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Poverty is also not sustainable. So that's number one. Number two is that if we can today say we are cutting grants, think of what will happen in the country. And then thirdly, it's not going to take us 2 days or 3 days, or I think even 40 years to try and eradicate poverty practically. Because we've been looking at the economy, what it is doing internationally, and actually very credible instruments in the country, like the Finance and the Fiscal Commission, have come out with very good reports on the role that is played by grants. But also there is one other thing that South Africans must understand. Social assistance is an investment. And that is why we tried at the beginning of the year to come up with a number of kids that passed grade 12, and most of them who performed very well, who are now in tertiary institutions or TVETs, who have been grant recipients. And therefore, also, it's encouraging that more children are in the system. And why do we have more children? There was a research that was done by UNICEF and other partners, and they found out that more than 1 million children were out of the system. We had to go and look for those children, because if you leave them out of the system, they will not be able to change their lives. Lastly, we always say a grant is not a silver bullet. There are other services that are related to the grant. Shelter, education, health, water, electricity, and other services.
Okay.
So it's not just the grant
thing.
only. There is a lot that government is doing.
Okay. All right. So, acting CEO, there are a number of specific things that people are coming through with questions on Twitter. Like Moses Magoro says, why don't we get social grants straight to us, because some money is deducted from nowhere? This deduction issue keeps coming through. What is allowed to be deducted, and how is it that we're seeing other deductions coming through the system? What's been happening?
I think with deductions in terms of the law, the only deduction that is allowed is 10% towards funeral cover. That's the one that we are aware of and that we facilitate as the social assistance program. We have received we've been inundated with a number of inquiries where people have raised questions that their grants have been deducted. We've been to communities, and when we're in communities, people have come forward and indicated that their grants have been deducted. In some cases, people have gone out to take loans and they were deducted from their cards. So when we deposit the money into the SASSA card, we deposit the full amount. And then from there, from the card, which now participate within the national payment system, deductions are effected. We have been all out going out to make sure that where we have investigated and found this were done illegally, we have done refunds.
Can people be taking out loans with this? Because this is not what the money is for, is it? I mean, they're almost offering these SASSA cards as security for taking loans out. Is that how it's supposed to be designed? I was online just now. I looked up SASSA, and one of the things that popped up was how to apply for a SASSA loan from Moneyline using a mobile app. Is that how it's supposed to be? I mean, this just popped up straight away.
I have to say to the public, SASSA does not have loans.
Right.
SASSA does not issue loans, and SASSA does not associate with any company that gives any loans. We are providing social grants as a basic security for people to provide for their basic needs. And those who go out to take loans are doing that, not from our side, and we are not encouraging that. We are trying to discourage communities from doing that, because this is the money that is supposed to be utilized to purchase food and ensure that children have their basic services and basic needs. And the most concerning aspect about it is that lately we have realized that even these deductions, they are done against, and the loans, they are made against the child support grant, which is the money that's supposed to go for children. It's really unfair. And we've even found that even the funeral policy goes to the children's grant, which is not supposed to happen, because the children's grant ends at the age of 18. So what happens to all these contributions after the age of 18? So we are working tirelessly to address these challenges, which are really have been a challenge for us in the past 2 or 3 years that we have identified, and we are working with the current payment provider to reverse those payments or deductions.
Yes.
SASSA has only one card.
Yes.
We don't know any other card.
Okay. So the challenge then here is you give the recipients money, And clearly you've got a challenge in terms of what they do with that money and how they encumber themselves on the basis that they're getting this grant. Can you tell someone who's receiving state assistance what they can do with the money or not? Because it is for a specific thing.
We can, Peter, I'll allow Zane to speak. There is also Connie here, who is the DDG for Welfare Services. Social workers, in actual fact, are supposed, it's part of a training to sit with grant recipients, come up with the budget so that the grant is used correctly. But due to that, things are always taken for granted, and we get used to things, but also the shortage of social workers puts us at a disadvantage, because we're not able to follow all grant recipients.
Right. Zane, you want to answer that?
I mean, I think the evidence that has been collected is that people generally spend their grant money on things that they need to spend it on. So most of the grant money goes on food expenditure. I think what we are looking at is a problem where, because if you look at it as a household or a person, the 1,500 doesn't look a lot. But when you look at it as a huge, with thousands and millions of people accessing that money, you can see that unscrupulous people operating in the financial sector will see it as a place to make a quick buck. And I think this is where the deductions are coming in essence. The argument that is being made is that once the money is paid by SASSA, it's not our responsibility. And I think what the minister is saying is we make it our responsibility in terms of talking to people and talks about how to spend the money more effectively, but also to talk about informed consent, what informed consent means. And the fact is that the way that the deductions have been taking place is, in our opinion, in most cases, not through informed consent. So we're calling it ambush marketing.
So are you intervening and helping them, the recipients, because they get caught up in these deals, don't they? Things start getting deducted and they didn't quite understand what they were signing off at the time. Are you assisting them to fight back, Rabakne?
We've done a lot of interventions. We go out to communities through Project Mikonzo, where we're taking services to the people. We are informing them, teaching them, and we're also doing house visits and community visits to say people must be aware about their rights, they must protect their SASSA card, but more than anything, where people have already taken loans or have already found themselves in illegal deductions, we have been facilitating the refunds of those deductions. Even today at the stadium, we'll be having the current service provider there so that they can facilitate refunds for communities. So whenever we go for community outreach programs, we try to bring the service provider to say, please come, let's work with these people, because the process can be very cumbersome for beneficiaries. So we're trying to say, come with us, now we want you to bring the refunds here to the people. But it is a cumbersome process, we are working on it, and we are trying to improve.
So education is very key to this. All right, we're going to take another break. After that, we're going to hear from our floor. There's a young woman I'd like to talk to. Her name is Vuyiswa. She's a beneficiary. She's 19, looking after two siblings, 10 and 9. And we'll find out how much of a difference this security, this grant has made in her life and her siblings. All of that coming up after this break. And Morning Live SABC, that's the Twitter handle.